I always thought being the dependable daughter was a quiet kind of strength. I stayed close to home, didn't make waves, paid my bills, and never asked for much. My brother had his family, my sister lived abroad, and I was the single one. The one they could always count on, but everything shattered the day I got a call from the bank about a delinquent loan. One I never took out. One that was in my name. At first, I thought it was identity theft. But then came the truth I didn't want to believe: my parents had taken out the loan themselves. My own mother had signed the papers. My father had co-signed. And when confronted, they didn't deny it, they justified it. You don't have kids. You don't have a mortgage. We didn't think you'd mind. They used my life, my sacrifices, as a blank check. This is the story of what came after. The unraveling of a family I thought I knew. The whispers, the guilt trips, the lies they told themselves to sleep at night. And how I found a voice I never knew I had. When I finally stopped being the good daughter, I was microwaving leftovers. When my phone rang, an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail at first. But it rang again. Same number. Something in my chest tightened. Hi, this is Hannah Freeman from Brookside Financial. I'm calling about your missed payment on the personal loan ending in 4123. Please contact us as soon as possible. I missed what? I stood there, holding my fork in mid-air, the plastic lid of my food still half on. I replayed the message. Again. And again. My name. My number. My loan. It had to be a scam. I don't take out loans. I live within my means, painfully. So, sometimes. No credit card debt. No impulse purchases. No risky financial moves. I Googled the company. Real. I called back after security questions. The woman on the line pulled up my file like it was nothing. Yes, the personal loan of $38,000 taken out last April. You're 4 months behind on payments. My ears rang. That's a mistake. I never. She read back the application details. My name. My address. My social. My email. My driver's license number. I started to sweat. I never authorized this. Someone must have stolen my identity. She paused. Ms. Reynolds, I see that the loan was taken out in person. Signed. With photo ID. I couldn't feel my feet. My breath came short. I hung up. I don't even remember saying goodbye. That night I barely slept. I paced my apartment like a caged animal. Every logical thought I had collapsed under the weight of one sickening idea: someone close to me did this. Someone with access. I opened my filing cabinet. My birth certificate, passport, and social were still there. But my driver's license, I'd reported it lost last year, hadn't I? My mom had picked me up that day from the DMV because my car was in the shop. We'd gone for coffee after. She'd told me she was proud of me, said it was good I didn't rush into marriage like everyone else. The next morning, I called the bank directly. Asked to see the documents. They said I'd need a subpoena if I was challenging the loan legally. But the clerk paused, softened. Off the record, she said quietly, I recognize the co-signer's name. It's a joint file. A Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds. Same last name. Your parents? I felt the world shift. Like the floor dropped out from under me. My parents? No. No. That couldn't be right. They wouldn't. I drove straight to their house. Mom was watering her succulents. Dad was in the living room, watching reruns. They smiled when they saw me. But my hands were trembling. What did you do? I asked. They looked at each other. Not with confusion, but with weariness. It was for the house, Mom said eventually. The roof. The plumbing. We didn't have any options. You put a loan in my name, I said, voice shaking. You committed fraud. You stole from me. Dad stood up. We were going to pay it off. You wouldn't have even known. And when were you planning to tell me? When it ruined my credit? My future? Mom's lips pursed. You're not married. You don't have kids. It's not like it's hurting anyone. Not hurting anyone. She said it like my life didn't count. I laughed. That dry, terrifying kind of laugh that sounds more like a scream. You picked me because I'm the single one, I whispered. Because I'm disposable. Mom reached for my arm. Sweetheart, I stepped back. Don't. Don't you dare. They stood there, small and silent. And suddenly a stranger in my own family, walked out, but I wasn't done. I didn't go home after that confrontation. I drove aimlessly for hours, the radio a soft blur behind the roar in my head. How long had they seen me this way? Not a person, not their daughter, but a resource. A name to borrow. A life to spend. They didn't even apologize. That was the part one couldn't stop chewing on. Not a single I'm sorry. Just reasons. Justifications. Like I'd been keeping a savings account for them by accident, by being single. I stayed at a cheap motel that night. I didn't tell anyone. I needed silence, and not the kind my apartment offered, the kind where nothing presses against your chest with guilt. That room was anonymous, ugly, and perfect. I stared at the popcorn ceiling for hours. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just thought. At some point, the voice inside me changed. It stopped asking why and started asking how. How do I undo this? How do I make sure this never happens again? How do I make them feel it? The next morning, I went to the bank in person. I told the clerk I was disputing the loan, that my parents had forged my authorization. Her face paled. You're saying your own parents? Yes, I said calmly. And I want the documents. Every form. Every signature. I'll file a police report if I have to. 2 hours later, I held copies of the paperwork. Their signatures were there. My forged one, too. Sloppy. The pen pressure was wrong. My mother's handwriting, neat, even on my name. The betrayal had been done slowly, deliberately. It made my stomach turn. I called my sister in Spain. I hadn't told her yet. She answered groggily, rubbing sleep from her voice. Are you sitting down? I asked. 30 minutes later, she was fully awake and furious. That's criminal, Julia. You have to report them. I know. You always defend them, she said, not unkindly. You always carry everything. Not this time. I contacted a lawyer. A friend from college, someone I trusted. I didn't even know where to begin explaining. She listened, let me finish, then said quietly, we'll get your name cleared. But you need to understand, this is going to hurt. Publicly. I nodded. Good. The legal steps took days. Filing the fraud report. Drafting the cease and desist. Serving notice. The worst part? My parents didn't respond. Not with panic. Not with begging. Just cold, infuriating silence. Then the calls started, from my brother. Angry voicemails. What are you doing? Mom and Dad are old. They didn't mean harm. You're ruining the family. Ruining the family. That phrase made my blood boil. So I called him back. They ruined me, Dan. My credit. My future. And they didn't even apologize. They chose me because I don't have a husband to protect me, because I live alone. I was the path of least resistance. I won't be anymore. He hung up. The worst part wasn't the betrayal, it was the rewriting of the narrative. Suddenly, I was the villain. The ungrateful daughter. The drama queen. The single spinster who turned on her own parents. I started writing it all down. Every detail. I needed to remember how it really happened before they buried the truth in guilt and gaslighting. My sister encouraged me to share it online. Even anonymously. You'd be shocked how many people go through this. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Then came the final straw. A letter from the debt collectors, escalating the case. Threatening wage garnishment. Despite everything I'd filed. Despite the fraud report, I stared at that letter for a long time. And then I picked up my phone and hit record. It took me 2 full days to gather the courage. I'd recorded the video already, 10 times, maybe more. I hated how my voice shook in the first takes, how I looked down when I should have looked straight into the camera. But the last one, the one I finally posted, I didn't try to be polished. I was tired. Not dramatic. Just tired. I didn't use their names. I blurred out personal information. But I told the story in painful detail, how I discovered the loan, how my parents had signed it in my name, how they justified it by saying, "You're single. You don't need as much." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just laid it out flat. Unflinching, quiet. I closed with this: they chose me because I have no one else to protect me. And I'm done being the safe choice. I thought no one would care. The video had over 40,000 views by morning. Then 100,000. Then 500,000. The comments poured in. People shared their own betrayals, parents who drained savings accounts, siblings who opened credit cards in their names, relatives who saw single women as free resources. I wasn't alone. And that hurt more than anything, but there were critics, too. People who called me cold. Who asked, "Why would you ruin your parents over money?" As if money was the only thing they took from me. My brother called again. This time, furious. "You posted about it? Are you insane? Do you know what people are saying about our family?" I didn't shout. I told the truth. "You're humiliating them." "No, Dan. They did that to themselves." He went quiet. "Then, you need help." "I have help," I said. "A lawyer. And now a platform. I'm not going back to silence." Then came the email, from my mom, subject line, "You're hurting us." I didn't open it right away. My hands shook. I waited until night, until I was too numb to feel anything else. Then I read it. She wrote that she never expected it to get this far. That they were desperate, and she thought I'd understand. That they loved me. That this isn't who we are. But it was who they were. That's the thing no one warns you about. When the people who raised you betray you, the whole foundation of who you are begins to crack. And once you see them clearly, you can't unsee it. Replied with one sentence, "You chose this." The silence that followed was louder than any apology could have been. In the days that followed, people kept asking for updates. They wanted to know what was happening legally. If my parents had responded. If I would forgive them. If I planned to keep them in my life. Forgiveness. That word sat in my throat like glass. Everyone wanted a resolution. A healing arc. A happy ending, but some stories don't end with hugs and lessons learned, some end with accountability. That week, my lawyer filed the fraud charges formally. We submitted everything: documents, proof of forgery, the video itself. I wasn't just trying to get the loan dismissed anymore. I wanted a record. I wanted the truth written somewhere official, and then, quietly, something else happened. My credit score started to climb. The loan was paused. The investigation had been taken seriously, but the real shift was internal. I started sleeping better. Not because the problem was gone, but because I wasn't hiding from it anymore, and still, the question hung in the air: would I forgive them? Even I didn't know the answer. Then one day, I got a knock at the door. It wasn't the police. It wasn't a neighbor. It was my father. I didn't open the door at first. I just stared through the peephole, heart pounding. My father hadn't reached out once, not a call, not a message. And now he was standing there, holding a paper bag like we were about to have lunch, opened it slowly. He gave me a tired smile. I brought your favorite, pastrami on rye. No mustard. I didn't move. You think a sandwich fixes this? His smile faltered. Can I come in? I let him. Not because I forgave him. I wanted to see if he'd lie to my face. He sat down carefully, like he was scared of breaking the furniture. Or maybe he was scared of me. That would be a first. I've been watching the videos, he said. Reading the comments. I stayed silent. I didn't know it would go this far. You mean, you didn't think I'd fight back? He looked up, eyes dull. We didn't mean to hurt you. We were just drowning. And your name, your credit, it was the only thing untouched. That's because I protected it, I snapped. I lived carefully. I skipped vacations. I rented instead of buying. I kept my financial life clean because I had to. And you took it from me without even asking. He leaned back, the sandwich untouched. I didn't know how to tell you. Your mother, she thought it would only be temporary. I laughed bitterly. So you both agreed to lie, and just hoped I wouldn't notice? I hoped we'd pay it off before you found out. And when you didn't? His hands trembled. I wanted to call you every day. I just didn't know what to say. You could have started with sorry. We sat in silence for a long time. The kind of silence that's heavier than any argument. Finally, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote you a letter. Not an email. Not a message. I wanted you to have something real. I didn't take it. You still don't think what you did was theft, do you? I asked. I think it was a mistake. No, I said, my voice sharp. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. This was a decision. He looked away. Your brother says you're turning this into a circus. Do you believe that? He didn't answer. That told me everything. Here's what's going to happen, I said, standing. You're going to leave. And you're going to tell Mom that if either of you contacts me again before this is resolved legally, I will add harassment to the list. His face twisted. Not in rage, but in something worse. Pity, you used to be so gentle, he said softly, and you used to be my hero. He stood slowly, his body stiff like guilt had aged him 10 years in one visit. He left the sandwich on the table. As the door shut behind him, I stared at the untouched bag. My favorite meal, brought like a peace offering from a man who still didn't think he'd done anything wrong that night. I didn't post a new video. I sat down and opened the folded letter, expecting maybe regret. An apology. Some trace of the father I once admired. Instead, it was a list of bills, mortgage repairs, plumbing, roof insulation, electrical, a water heater replacement. Every line had a price next to it. Totals at the bottom. No words. No I'm sorry. Just numbers of proof, in his mind, of what they needed from me. That was the moment something in me broke, not from sadness, but from clarity. They hadn't betrayed me out of desperation. They had justified it. Tracked it. Itemized it, and the worst part, I think they still believed they were entitled to it. The next day, I posted again. I read the letter on camera, every number, every line. And then I said, this wasn't about love. This was about control. And if you think blood means you get to own someone, you're wrong. And that's when the story really went viral. I didn't think they'd actually do it. I knew they were angry, humiliated by the videos, by the waves of attention, by the messages from distant cousins and old church friends who suddenly knew everything. I expected the guilt trips, the tears, even the silent treatment, But what I didn't expect was a letter from their lawyer. Cease-and-desist.my parents, my own parents, had retained legal counsel to demand I remove all defamatory content, cease public attacks, and refrain from further maligning the family's reputation. The same people who forged my name on a $38,000 loan now wanted me to be silent. The irony nearly choked me. I sent the letter straight to my attorney. She read it, sighed, and said, "They're bluffing. This isn't defamation. It's documented truth." But the damage wasn't the letter, it was the message beneath it. They still believed they had the right to control the story. Even after everything. Even after legal charges, public backlash, and my complete emotional unraveling, they still thought they could script the ending. So I posted again. This time, I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I told the audience exactly what was happening. I read parts of the letter aloud. I explained how common it was, this dynamic where families commit harm, then demand silence under the banner of respect. I said, "You don't get to break someone and then shame them for bleeding." The response was volcanic. Thousands of people shared stories in the comments. A woman whose brother stole her identity. A man whose parents used his student loans. A mother whose son forced her into co-signing and then vanished. People were done being silent, and that's when everything changed. Brookside Financial officially dropped the loan. The fraud investigation, the mounting evidence, the videos as they had no choice. I got the confirmation email on a Tuesday morning, sitting on my balcony, clutching my coffee like a shield. My name was cleared. My credit restored, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. Hollow. Like I'd won the war but lost the terrain I used to call home. Hadn't spoken to my parents since the letter. My brother, once again, called to yell. Said I had gone too far. That I was vindictive. That I was embarrassing the family. I didn't bother responding. There's a grief that comes with losing people who are still alive. A slow mourning for what they could have been, if only they had chosen differently. I kept making videos. Not just about my case, but about financial abuse, boundaries, the myth of being the good child. My audience grew. Not because I was special, but because I had spoken out. And because so many people couldn't, people began messaging me not for gossip, but for guidance. Asking how to protect themselves. How to heal. How to stop blaming themselves. That, more than anything, made me realize this wasn't just my story anymore. It was ours, and in the end, my parents' greatest miscalculation wasn't the fraud. It was thinking I'd stay quiet. They taught me to be responsible. To be generous. To carry the family's weight, but what they never expected, that I'd use everything they taught me, against the very silence they depended on. So no, I didn't sue them back. I didn't escalate it. I didn't need to. I just kept telling the truth, and they can try to silence that all they want, but the thing about truth is, once you say it out loud, it doesn't belong to just you anymore. It belongs to everyone who's been waiting to hear it.